Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here, CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. This afternoon, I've got with me Simon Kingsnorth, and we're going to talk about Simon's new book, or whether it's the third edition of his new book. I'm not quite sure. But before we get in and talk about this, Simon, where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest answer is just Google me, right? As much as Microsoft hate me saying that. Google me, yeah. I mean, simonkingsnorth.com is the website. You'll find me on all the social media channels. So wherever you go.
So I remember reading the first version of this. I'm sure it was the first version, and this has now got just under 400 pages. It's a big old thick document now in third edition. I mean, what's been your inspiration to keep updating the editions?
I mean, the thing is, it's 400 odd pages, but it's such a massive area, digital marketing now, as everyone knows who's in it. Of course, you could easily write 400,000 pages on it if you wanted to. Really, the inspiration for the first edition, which came out back in 2016, was that I was working in marketing at the time, had been for 20 odd years then, just coming up on 20 years, I think it was at the time. And I felt that there were three segments of marketeers that I was experiencing. There were those that had come from a marketing background and just didn't get the whole digital thing. It was becoming really predominant and just didn't really fully understand it. There were those from a techie background that wanted to move into marketing and sort of SEO roles or web development roles, which you need a blend of both. And then there were the young guys coming through who'd never done marketing, never done tech. They're learning it all together as one digital marketing piece. And there wasn't really a good book out there that said, okay, whichever one of these people you are, how do you put together a strategy that looks at what is a good marketing strategy, keeping in mind all the things you need to consider from a digital perspective? So that's where the inspiration came from. Thankfully, the first edition did very well, got picked up by a lot of universities, technology institutes, Chartered Institute of Marketing use it. So I like updating it. Obviously, digital, you have to update, ideally every week. You can't publish a new book every week, though. So I update it every 3 years to make sure it stays relevant with the latest trends. But I kind of have to as well to keep all the universities and institutes, make sure they've got the most relevant, up-to-date information.
So one of the things that I notice about it is, I mean, it covers such a large expanse of different areas, doesn't it? Because you're covering from SEO, marketing automation, social media strategy. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, really, is that if you're looking to put together a marketing strategy in today's digital world, you need to consider all the different parts. And I often talk about marketing as an ecosystem. And in reality, we as marketers should be trying to move away from digital marketing. We should just be thinking of marketing, and some of which is digital and some of which isn't, majority of which is, of course, these days. But we should be trying to move away from the term digital marketing altogether. But when I think of marketing, I think of it as an ecosystem. Everything affects everything else. From what you do with your brand layers across every channel. What you do with SEO can influence paid search and social media, and the data from all of those channels can inform each other. Your automation strategy is based on communications you're having with consumers at certain parts of their journey, which you'll see from the data you're seeing across all the different channels. Analytics, likewise. I mean, you look at every single point. There's no one area of marketing you can say, just do that and you'll be fine. Because even if you do just do that, you're going to be affecting 10 other things, whether you like it or not. So it's important to have a strategy that thinks about the implications of all those different bits and pieces, where you should focus, depending on what type of business you are, and what effort, how about to do that. So, of course, there are deeper books on SEO. There are deeper books on social media. You can't write everything in that one book, but it gives the high-level principles about how to execute and pull it all together. That's the purpose. But you're right, it needs to be broad as a result, yeah.
And one of the things that I really like is that you're offering, there's further reading. And of course, you've got all of the references in place. So you're offering the reader the ability to say, okay, if you're interested in this bit, here's 5 books that you need to read.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. So I don't claim to know everything, and I wouldn't believe anyone who did. I think in my mind, there are certain things that people are good at and certain things they're less good at, and certain strengths and weaknesses they all have. I've been very fortunate in my 25 years in marketing that I've worked in most disciplines. I've done the paid search from when Google first launched it, SEO back from the late 90s, but also TV advertising and direct mail and a bit of sales. And so I've worked right across the remit, which is great for me, having putting together something that looks very broadly together as a strategy. But am I the world's greatest SEO expert? No, I know it pretty well, but I'm not the world's greatest, right? Same with paid search. Pick any discipline. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, perhaps. I don't know, but yeah, certainly from my side, I think there's always more information you can get, and the world is changing all the time. So obviously, I'm publishing blogs all the time on updates, things that are changing. You can follow those on my website or through any of my newsletters, and there are plenty of other people doing the same. There's tons of content on YouTube, and there are also some fantastic books, including yours, Tim, which, as you know, I have in my cupboard behind me because I'm a big fan of that one as well. So, for me, there are loads of great publications on all sorts of areas, and I don't encourage everyone to just follow me. I'm not some kind of god, so by all means, follow as many people as you can, get as many opinions, and delve as deep as you can into every subject. It's something I always encourage.
So one of the things that you've done is you've got different parts in this. So the first part is knowing your business objectives and your customer. So give us an overview of what that is.
Yeah, so look, it's funny because I do a lot of strategic work for clients around the world, helping them develop their marketing strategies, go to market, rethinking what they're doing, entering new countries, new territories, launching new products. And one thing we often talk about in those sessions is a real deep understanding of your goals and a good understanding of who your customers are. And whilst it seems really obvious on the surface to ask those questions, I find at least 8 times out of 10 people really don't know the answers. And that's critical to starting really where you begin in a strategy, right? Where are we and where do we want to get to are your 2 questions at the beginning. How do you get from A to B if you don't know what A or B are? So really coming down to what your goals are is critical, and keeping that in mind with everything you're going to do across your strategy is critical. I hear a lot of businesses when they're building their values talk about how we're customer first. And then they'll go and say, well, we're going to raise our prices 50% because that's going to increase our profit. Our customers will hate it, but we'll make more money. It's fine. Well, that's not customer first, right? So if you're going to be customer first, that's great. But then you've got to live those values through. If you're going to be profit first, then say you're profit first. Don't just pretend you're something else. So really understanding what your goals are and what you specifically want to achieve is important. And as I say, knowing your audience is critical. So most businesses I find make some big assumptions around who their audiences are. And there's often some cognitive bias in that as to who I think they are based on me and some people I've met who I know are customers. There's always a bit of that. There's also some misconceptions around who is a digital customer, right? Digital customers are young, right? All the guys everyone on TikTok is under 25, right? And everyone on Instagram is 18 to 35. And there's a lot of these sort of facts, so-called facts, that get thrown around. The fact is everyone is digital now as well, and it's important to appreciate that. You can't say, well, we don't need a website. And I've genuinely heard this from companies. We don't need a website. Our customers are about 50 years old. We don't need a website. They're too old for the internet. Well, I'm approaching 50 myself, so that's a depressing thing to hear. But also the internet's been around in quite a big degree for 20 years. So 50-year-olds were 30 when the internet came out. You can't tell me a 30-year-old doesn't know how to use a computer. So I think understanding your audience in real detail, segmenting them, and developing personas for them, and understanding what you genuinely want to achieve, that's the basics of what we're talking about within that section of the book.
And in the next section is about integrating digital change into your wider organization.
Yeah. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can read it out if you want me to.
Yeah, just read out that whole section of the book.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of hours, right? Look, I think one of the pieces of inspiration for me when I wrote that section is I was working with a business at the time who were doing a lot of work around innovation. They had various innovation groups within the business. It's a large business, and they were various different names for these innovation groups, and they were pulling in people that they thought were innovative within the company. And in reality, there was no real innovation going on. There was a lot of talking about innovation and writing innovation and putting some diagrams up on walls and having lots of PowerPoint packs that talked about how great innovation is, and no actual innovation going on. So I think one thing that's important, especially in the larger organizations, is you can get a bit carried away with buzzwords. And really, you need to innovate at every level of the organization. So, building innovation and change into a company is not about having 10 people sitting in a room once every 3 months talking about innovation. It's about embedding real values and real behaviors and rewards and goals and anything into everything that everybody does to look for new opportunities and change. It's about ensuring there are training and development opportunities for people within the company, big or small. I mean, we're a small company. My agency consultancy is a small company, but we still have a development day every year where everyone can take a day off and go through some kind of training course to better themselves. Of course, we have development throughout the whole year as well, but some specific time when they're not at work and they're just off developing themselves in one way or another, which doesn't have to be for their job. I just had this conversation with them yesterday. It doesn't have to be something specifically related to their job, but I prefer it, right? So,
yeah.
But, so there's a lot around that, looking at technology and how to change technology within the organization, and digital transformation. Again, that's another lovely buzzword, but it's got to mean something. And digital transformation is not about buying a piece of technology. The tech is an enabler, really. It's how you use that technology, the processes you set up, the way you train the people, the way you structure the data. That's the stuff that's important in digital transformation. The tech obviously is critical. You can't do it without the tech, but the tech on itself doesn't solve the problem. It's all the layers on top of the technology. So there's a lot of work to be done in still getting people to understand what innovation and change embedded within an organization really means. And that's a lot of what that section's about.
So the next section is about, you call it using channel strategy to reach your customers. And this is where you go through the SEO, the paid search, display advertising, social media, marketing automation, affiliate schemes, content strategy. I mean, it's all here.
I hope so. Well, a lot of it anyway.
So talk us through that. So talk us through what you're trying to get over in that. In this part 3.
Yeah. So as I say, right, if you want to be a specialist in SEO, I would suggest reading several SEO books, following several SEO blogs, SEO journal. I mean, there's some great publications, blogs, influencers, etc., who are worth following. And of course, I talk about it a lot myself as well. The book is not trying to tell you everything about how to do SEO. What it's trying to do in each of those channels, SEO, paid search, social content, as you say, is really give you the core structure, the key things you need to know and understand to be able to put together your strategy. So there's a certain level of knowledge you need to have, and a certain way of thinking, I suppose, that's transformative.
And as a leader, it's about asking the right questions.
That's right, and 100% right. It's not always about knowing the answers, but it is about knowing the questions, and that's a great point, Tim. I think that no one out there knows all the answers, but if you understand the sort of core principles and the direction and the high level thinking, then you can at least direct yourself towards, well, I know that I don't know that, so I need to find it out, right? I know that I should, in order to answer this problem, I know that bit is missing, so I need to go there. So I have models in there, like, for example, the SEO triangle, which I developed for the first book, which is really just looking at the ranking factors across SEO and putting them into links, technical and content, which just breaks it down into, in your mind, links, technical and content as the 3 things I need to think about. Obviously, it delves a lot deeper than that, and the book does go into that in a lot more detail. And SEO isn't really just about thinking about ranking factors, of course. It's about producing fantastic experiences and content for people that is of great benefit to them, and then your SEO will work. I had that argument, not necessarily an argument, but I made that point on Twitter sometime in the last 24 hours, where someone was saying, do we write too much SEO content? My answer was, one piece of SEO content is too much SEO content. You should be writing good content. If that works for SEO, you've done a good job. So
absolutely, because I mean, the thing about what Google does is the job of Google is to surface what it sees as the answer to the question.
Yeah.
And if you're spending all your time trying to second guess or scam the algorithm, it will find you out.
Yeah, it will. It always will. Yeah, and I've been in SEO for as long as SEO has been around, really, not far off. And back in the day, there were a lot of very dodgy black hat techniques within SEO that were being thrown around, putting white keywords on a white background so you can stuff them in as much as you can. Lots of stuff back in the day. You always get caught out, right? But ultimately, the thing I always say is that you shouldn't be optimizing for Google anyway. You should be optimizing for the user. And I've been saying this for 10, 15 years now, and there's plenty of speeches of me waffling away on YouTube about this. But that's ultimately the thing. Google is trying to prioritize a great experience for the user. If you try and do the same thing, you'll always be in line with Google. if you try and beat Google, as soon as they change an algorithm, you at the best, you've got to catch up. At the worst, you're gone. You're dead. And I've seen companies literally go out of business because they've been trying to trick the algorithm, and they got caught, and off they go out of Google, and they've got no business anymore. So
yeah, I have a mate who he talks about this at conferences, but he was about to go into his first board meeting when he was tapped on the shoulder and said, "Before you go into the board meeting, just so you know, we've gone dark on Google."
Nice.
Of which they got 80% of their business through Google search.
I've heard it. I've heard it so many times. I've known a couple of businesses that have gone out, and I've been the man who's been sent in to fix some pretty horrific black hat SEO issues as well in companies. So yeah, I know what that's like. But yeah, obviously the book isn't just on SEO. I'm focusing on that one chapter for this section. But the point is that it's the core principles of every section you should know about in order to deliver your strategy effectively. So I think those models, I like to think they do well. It's the feedback's been good on them, so fingers crossed.
And then part 4 is about conversion, retention, and measurement, which I think is critical, isn't it? It's about
it is critical. It's like the ugly brother, isn't it? It's not as sexy, right? It's, people don't talk about. You don't hear loads of people talking on social media about their fantastic retention strategies too much, right? You hear a load of stuff about how cool SEO is and all this amazing stuff with social media and influencers and technology. You don't hear too much about loyalty and retention, but they're so important, right? We all know it costs a lot more money to acquire a new client than it does to keep one. So the more you can do around retention and loyalty, the better. There are some fantastic schemes that you can come up with on loyalty, and marketing automation platforms now give us so much power to understand what's happening and how we react to that, and how we build automated journeys to keep people in the loop and keep them warm, but also to look at predictive trends around when someone might look like they're perhaps going to disappear. They're showing certain data signals about they're going to leave us, they're going to behave a certain way, and catching them before that. And there's a lot of smart stuff in there as well. But also customer service. Again, one of those things that I think sometimes gets missed out of the marketing mix, and it is borderline. It is a grey area. You could effectively be another department, and in many companies it is. But there's a certain element of marketing within customer service, as there is within sales as well, and there's both grey areas on the edge of marketing. I think for me, a customer service department now, it has to know how to use social media, and that strategy has to be embedded into how you run your social media generally as a marketing department as well, how you message and how they use the CRM system that you're also using for marketing. So when you're servicing someone, you can look in there and see what emails have they read, what have they opened, what pages have they visited. Again, that's all around the same areas as the marketing strategy. So that whole CRM, loyalty, retention, service piece is the piece that is not, as I say, not particularly sexy in the marketing mix, but for me is possibly, after planning, I think the most important part of the strategy. If you get your service and your retention piece right, and you plan really effectively, because as we know, failing to plan is planning to fail. Yeah, exactly. So we love our cliches in marketing, don't we? But if you get both the ends of that right, everything in the middle, you will be able to flex and get right. Having a fantastic SEO strategy, but one that doesn't fit what you're trying to achieve as a business, and then completely failing on customer service, doesn't get you anywhere. So it's critical for me that the top and tail, I suppose, of the strategy are right, albeit not the sexiest parts.
And then finally, part 5, tailoring your final digital marketing strategy. So talk us through that.
Yeah, so that really is it's a summary to catch all of everything we talk about throughout the book. So looking at how we talk about the key things within SEO and social media, and then where we looked at audiences and how you compare against your competition, and all that good stuff from the early parts of the book. We start to say through a step-by-step process, how do you within your business build your strategy? So how do we find out what's relevant for you? So whether you're trying to grow a B2B SaaS business, or you're trying to sell t-shirts on your website, or whether you have 100,000 employees or no employees, whatever it is, that last part of the business really takes you through all those channels and say, this is where you should be thinking, this is what you should be thinking about, how it will affect you as a company, perhaps where you should focus, and also sometimes where you should not focus. There are things not to focus on as well, which sometimes is a bit of a surprise to people when you talk about social media, and sometimes I'll say to them, don't worry about Twitter so much on the video for you, not quite so relevant. And sometimes, but it's Twitter. Surely I have to be on Twitter. Well, no, not necessarily, right? If you're trying to grow a B2B business, your best use of resource, let's not be busy fools, focus that energy into LinkedIn. If you can do some campaign management and some organic content through LinkedIn, you might actually find you get that far more productive, and Twitter's just a bit of a distraction, really. So there are areas like that to focus on. And I'm not saying Twitter is always a distraction before someone from Twitter gets me on the phone, but Elon Musk starts calling me up, my stock price is going down. So I think it's important in that last chapter to look at that every individual that's reading the book and tailor it to them, and that's critical, because it does. Every strategy really should not only be tailored to the marketeer running it, but also to the client who's experiencing it as well. And that's where we're trying to get to at the end.
Simon, thank you so much. The thing that you've got a whole load of great diagrams in here as well.
I do my best. My PowerPoint skills are fantastic.
Which I know that Kogan Page will have wanted you to put in, because but the thing is, I don't know about you. Well, when I first wrote my first book, there's like 8 diagrams.
Yeah.
Now if I was to do it, there would be like 50.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the thing is that it makes it, it makes it far easier, and if you get something like that, it's not just page after page after page of text, which the modern reader doesn't want. It really breaks it up. That's
right. And I mean, look, we as humans are generally visual, which is why we love video content generally more than written content. My wife will tell you the exact opposite, but as a rule, video content is generally more popular than written, because we just absorb things easier. We can see them, we can picture how they fit together. Okay, great, logically got it, that makes sense, move on. Rather than reading a page of content and maybe having to skip back, or what did that say again, how do I refer to that? It's just much easier visually. So infographics and videos are always good. So yeah, we have a lot of that, but there's still a lot of text in there, I'm afraid.
But I mean, it's good text. So where is it that people can find this on Amazon? I'm assuming.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get it on Amazon. Most bookshops around the world, but certainly Amazon's the obvious place where most people go to. And of course, you can buy it straight through my website and everything else.
Right. And Kogan Page website.
And the Kogan Page website. Yeah, absolutely.
We all
Amazon's most people's one-stop solution, isn't it, these days? So yeah, free plug for Jeff Bezos there.
So, Simon, thank you so much for coming on. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
Yeah, so absolutely. By all means, you can reach out to me on any of the social media channels that you would expect. So certainly Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. And of course, through my website, simonkingsnorth.com. Just give me a shout anytime you need me. You get hold of me there.
Brilliant. Simon, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the new book that you've got out. And, as you know, I've read it and I think it's excellent. So.
Thanks, Tim. Great. Love your book too. So happy days.
So I actually say so on the back.
You do say so on the back of this one, don't you? Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for talking. Thanks. Bye.